My son held my hand as I delivered his baby brother on the kitchen floor. My husband, he wasn't there. And when he showed up later, his reaction ended our marriage. I went into labor early, alone in the kitchen. My husband was at his mother's for their usual Sunday dinner. I tried calling, but his mother answered and said, "He's busy eating, call someone else." I gave birth on the floor, my 10-year-old son clutching my hand. When my husband finally arrived, he stared at the baby and said, "He doesn't look like me." I handed him the scissors for the umbilical cord and said, "Cut what you want. You're not staying." It was a Sunday, 3 weeks shy of my due date. I remember the date clearly because I'd spent that morning folding baby clothes. Tiny socks, onesies with little ducks, and a soft green blanket I'd picked up at a second-hand shop. I was 37 weeks pregnant, exhausted, swollen, and barely sleeping. That morning I felt dull aches in my lower back, but I brushed them off as typical late pregnancy discomfort. I carried on with my day as usual. My husband, Daniel, was getting ready to head to his mother's. Sunday dinners at her house were a big deal to her. She called it family tradition. He called it mandatory. I despised it, not because I hated family gatherings, but because I always felt like an outsider. I was barely acknowledged, often ignored, and sometimes openly criticized. She'd make snide remarks about my appearance, my parenting of our son, Ethan, or how her house wasn't clean enough, though she never offered to help. When I was pregnant with Ethan, she told Daniel I was likely exaggerating my nausea for sympathy. He laughed it off when I said it stung, claiming she didn't mean it that way. He always had an excuse for her. This time I didn't ask him to stay. I knew what he'd say. I watched him put on his jacket, grab his keys, and walk out. I was in the kitchen trying to chop potatoes when the pains sharpened lower, more intense. They came faster, closer together. I leaned against the counter, breathing hard. My hands trembled. Ethan was in the living room reading. He was 10, gentle, observant, always studying my face like he understood more than most grown-ups. I dialed Daniel, no answer. I called again, voicemail. On the third try, his mother picked up. "He's eating," she said, like that settled it. I told her I was in labor and needed him. She said, "Find someone else," and hung up. I stared at the phone, frozen. My pulse raced. My legs felt weak. I wanted to yell, but I held back for Ethan's sake. Minutes later, my water broke. It spilled across the kitchen floor, soaking my clothes. I grabbed a towel and sank down. It hit me then, I was truly alone. No husband, no help, just me and my 10-year-old son who now stood in the doorway, eyes wide with fear. I told him it was okay. I told him to grab my phone. He asked if I was going to die. That shattered me. I told him to call 911. He did, his hands shaking. He gave me the phone and I tried to stay calm for the dispatcher. They said help was on the way but delayed by traffic. They told me to lie down if I could. It sounded like the labor was moving fast. I stretched out on the cold tiles, using a cushion Ethan brought from the sofa, and waited. The contractions were fierce, relentless. The pain was unbearable, and I couldn't shield Ethan from it anymore. He sat beside me, holding my hand, tears streaming down his face. I muffled my screams with a towel so the neighbors wouldn't hear. I told Ethan not to look, but he stayed. He wouldn't leave. I pushed, I screamed, I felt everything. Then suddenly the baby came. It was quick and brutal. I caught him somehow. His cries were soft but alive. I wrapped him in a towel and held him close, crying and bleeding on the kitchen floor. The paramedics still hadn't arrived. Ethan kept whispering, "You did it, Mom, you did it." An hour later, Daniel walked in. He didn't rush. He didn't look worried. He just stepped inside, saw the blood, the baby, me trembling on the floor, and said, "He doesn't look like me." I didn't meet his eyes. I handed him the scissors the paramedics left and said, "Cut what you want. You're not staying." He stood there, silent, confused. Ethan helped me to the couch while the paramedics checked the baby. Daniel asked questions, but I ignored him. That night, I locked the bedroom door. He slept on the sofa. I didn't cry, not for him. Something shifted inside me that night. Not from the birth. That was done. What broke was my willingness to pretend he still loved me or ever had. I started planning my next steps, even as I cradled my newborn. I wasn't living like this anymore. Not for me. Not for Ethan. Not for this baby. And not for a man who left me screaming into a towel while he sat at his mother's table. The next morning, Daniel acted like nothing had happened. He brought me coffee as if that erased his absence. He asked if I needed anything. I didn't respond. I just fed the baby and looked through him. He didn't apologize. He didn't mention missing the birth. He acted like he was the one who'd had a rough day. In the days that followed, he told people we had a crazy home birth, as if he'd been there guiding me. A neighbor said he claimed he coached me over the phone. He wasn't even on the call. He wasn't even honest. When I told my sister everything, she offered to stay with me. I said yes. That's when Daniel got mad. He didn't want outsiders in our home, said it was disrespectful. I reminded him he wasn't there when I needed him. That night he didn't yell loudly, but his words cut. He accused me of turning the kids against him, of making him look bad on purpose. He said, "You could have held off, you should have waited." As if I could control labor, as if it was my fault. The real fracture came 2 weeks later. I found texts on his phone, not just from his mother, though those were bad enough, calling me ungrateful, controlling, but from another woman. Her name was Kayla. At first I thought she was a colleague, then I read more. The messages went back months. There were pictures, hotel receipts. I went numb, not shocked, just exhausted. I didn't confront him right away. I needed to think. I pieced it together. The missed doctor visits, his distance during my pregnancy, the late work nights that lasted hours. It all clicked. I'd been so focused on Ethan and keeping our home steady that I hadn't noticed he'd already checked out. That weekend, his mother showed up unannounced. She walked in while I was nursing, looked at the baby, sneered, and said, "Still doesn't look like Daniel." I told her to get out. She said, "This is my son's house." I said, "Not for much longer." That spread fast. Daniel came home livid, said I disrespected his family, that I humiliated him. I said, "You humiliated yourself by not showing up for your child's birth." He had no response. He started staying out later. Sometimes he didn't come home. Sometimes he came back drunk. Ethan stopped talking to him. He used to wait up to say goodnight, but now he stayed in his room with earbuds in. I found a drawing he made. Me, him, and the baby on one side, Daniel far off, a faceless figure with jagged lines around him. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, photos, notes. I backed up the texts and emailed them to myself. I opened a new bank account. Quietly, carefully, I knew what was coming. He thought I was fragile. He thought I'd beg. But I didn't, not this time. Then he crossed a line I couldn't forgive. During an argument, he grabbed Ethan's arm, not hard enough to leave a mark, but enough to make him cry. That was it. That was when I stopped hesitating. The revenge began quietly. After he grabbed Ethan, I vowed my son wouldn't grow up thinking that was okay. I wouldn't let this man who left me bleeding on the kitchen floor touch my child again. But the betrayal ran deeper than I imagined. A week later, a letter arrived from a debt collector. I thought it was a mistake. It had Daniel's name, then another came, and another. Credit cards I didn't know about. Loans he took out months ago, some starting when I got pregnant. He'd opened a credit line in both our names. I never saw the money. I went to the bank, discreetly. That's when I discovered a second credit card on our joint account. Maxed out, the statements showed hotel charges, bar bills, jewelry, and designer clothes. Not for me. I'd been wearing the same stretched-out maternity clothes for months. The dates lined up with Kayla's texts, but it got worse. Kayla wasn't just a fling, she was pregnant. I found out on her Instagram, scrolling late while feeding the baby. She posted a sonogram captioned, "So blessed to start a family with a man who treats me like royalty." She tagged Daniel. His name, his face, everything. She didn't know about me or didn't care. When I confronted him, he denied it. Then he blamed me, said I pushed him away, that I was too focused on motherhood. He wasn't sorry. Just irritated I'd found out. I called my sister to take Ethan and the baby for a weekend. While they were gone, I copied every document. I spent hours at the library printing bank statements, police reports, and saving screenshots from every account I could access. Then I checked the camera. 3 months before the birth, I'd set up a cheap security camera in the living room to watch Ethan when I rested. Daniel called it a waste, said I was paranoid, but I'd left it on. The footage from that day showed Daniel at home that morning, arguing on the phone, pacing. He wasn't at his mother's when I called. He left hours later, not for dinner. He went to Kayla's. While I bled in the kitchen and Ethan cried, Daniel was with her. He'd lied to his mother too. She told me to call someone else because she thought he was at her house. That lie caught up with him. The final blow was a voicemail from Kayla. She found my number in Daniel's call log and wanted to talk. She sounded too calm. She said she was 6 months pregnant and that Daniel swore he was leaving me. That he called me unstable and said Ethan wasn't his. She said she wanted no drama, just wanted her man to be happy. That message didn't break me with sadness. It gave me clarity. Daniel wasn't just reckless, he wasn't just selfish. He was building a new life while trying to erase ours quietly. He wanted to vanish, but not before draining me dry. I knew what I had to do. No more waiting, no more warnings, no more silence. The plan was already forming. It took 2 months to finalize everything. I didn't yell, I didn't confront him again. I stayed calm, smiled when I had to, played the role. I let him think I was too broken to fight. That's what he always thought. That I was nothing without him. But I'd already contacted a lawyer. My sister covered the retainer. I brought every document, bank records, messages, social media posts, camera footage. I didn't just want to leave. I wanted to ensure he couldn't touch me or the kids again. The lawyer was sharp, steady. She said we had a strong case for full custody, financial fraud, and abandonment. She said I'd done most of her work already. That gave me courage. One morning while Daniel was in the bathroom, I looked him in the eye and said, "I filed." He froze, razor in hand. "Filed what?" "Everything." I told him he'd be served soon. That was our last real conversation. He didn't believe me at first. Then the papers came. He tried to come home drunk that night, pounding on the door, shouting through the window. The baby cried. Ethan hid in his room. I didn't open the door. I called the police and watched them put him in a cruiser while he yelled that I'd ruined his life. I got a temporary restraining order days later, a permanent one soon after. He tried to fight the divorce, claimed I was lying. His lawyer was careless and didn't know about most of my evidence. Mine presented the judge with screenshots, footage, and my medical records from the birth. She showed the times I called him, how he ignored me, how he was elsewhere. She played Kayla's voicemail. The judge asked one question. "Where were you when your wife gave birth at home with your son watching?" Daniel didn't answer. I got full custody. He got supervised visits but never showed up. Probably too busy with his new life. Kayla had her baby a few months later. I didn't reach out. She messaged me crying, said Daniel cheated on her too, left after 2 weeks and blocked her. She said she felt foolish, that she didn't know who he really was. I didn't reply. I deleted the message. I sold the wedding ring. It wasn't much, but it covered the court fees. I took Ethan and the baby and stayed with my sister until I found a rental. We got a small place, simple, quiet, safe. The baby's crib fit next to my bed. Ethan got his own room. He started drawing again, this time just the 3 of us. One day he asked, "Are we okay now?" I told him the truth. "We already are." Daniel's credit tanked. The accounts were frozen by court order. The debt collectors went after him. A friend said he got evicted. He called me once from a new number begging for help. Said he was living in his car, that he missed his boys. I blocked him. His mother tried to reach out. Sent letters calling me heartless, said I ruined her son. I sent back copies of her texts and a note. He ruined himself. She stopped writing. It took time to feel safe, to feel whole. I still jump when the doorbell rings unexpectedly. But now when I sit on the couch nursing my youngest, I feel peace. I feel strong. Ethan reads next to me. He laughs again. He doesn't look afraid anymore. That kitchen floor is etched in my mind. Every tile, every scream, every moment I thought I might not survive. But I did. I made it through, and I never looked back.